Your arms.
Arms?
How do you keep your arms nice and slender?
Arms, I'd use like resistance bands, and you just kind of pull. You can do this, and you can put a resistance band here and do.
It's Dr. Strickland. I gotta take it. I'll answer. I'm sorry. Okay.
That don't sound good.
All right, I'll tell her. Thanks.
Give it to me straight, son. Give it to him. How long do I have?
She still has to tell me who my father is.
Our final panelist is a living legend and 12-time Grammy nominee. Before launching his solo career in 2000, he racked up a string of hits in the late 70s and 80s as a frontman with the Gap Band. The pioneering R&B funk group charted such records as Outstanding, Yearning for Your Love, Burn Rubber on Me, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, and Early in the Morning. Since then, he has released 6 solo albums and received BET's 2013 Lifetime Achievement Award. In the years between the Gap Band's heyday, he survived drug and alcohol addiction, homelessness, and prostate cancer. He chronicled his odds-defying life and career in 2015 best-selling autobiography, I Am Charlie Wilson. Sober now for 22 years, the singer says, "I wouldn't have believed I'd be where I am right now. That's why I shout every night, because I thank God for allowing me to be here." Somebody say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Would you please give a warm welcome to Mr. Charlie, Uncle Charlie Wilson.
Word up, man. This is, I think I speak for everyone here. These are 2 topics that are really one topic that's close to all of us. And we definitely want to thank the Recording Academy, Music Cares, BET, and Jerry L for having each of us today. This is an important conversation. Let's give a round of applause. I want to start with you, Vic. I mean, I think Jerry L gave a great introduction when he talked about how open and outspoken you have been on this topic. You've talked about your own experiences and how different substances have helped you with creativity, different experiences that you've had with a near-fatal acid trip. How have you been able to make sure you can control your substances while maintaining your creativity, which I think is something that's a fear for most artists?
You know, for me, I could remember the moment when my brain started to change. I was maybe 15 years old, and I started smoking weed when I was 11 years old. And anxiety and depression runs in my family. So I guess as I started to get older and come into adolescence and later into adulthood, I could feel the things that I was putting into my body start to impact me differently.
Awesome. I'll raise my hand on the numbers. Okay. And so anyhow, before we get started, I just want to say a few thank yous. First to our partner for this evening, BET. It's been a wonderful experience working with their amazing team on this event. Just want to give a very special thank you to Jermaine Hall, Kara Barnett, and Andrew Ricketts, as well as the rest of the amazing BET team. I'd also like to thank the Grammy Museum leadership, Scott Goldman and Rita George, our senior leadership at the Recording Academy, as well as the entire Recording Academy staff who worked really hard to make tonight's event happen. I just want to take a moment to mention their names. Kelly Purcell, Shireen Jonty Reed, Yvonne Faison, Lindsay Gabler Williams, Mazen Alawar, she's recently married, Alexis Maurer, Sean Ruderman, Andy Cox, and our fantastic LA chapter intern, Hannah Koulis. We'd also like to thank the artists' teams who were also very supportive of this event from the very beginning. It has been a pleasure working with all of you. And last but not least, we'd like to thank all of our Recording Academy members who are here tonight. We truly value your membership and your involvement with us. And so without further ado, I'm going to begin introducing tonight's panelists and our moderator. Our moderator is currently the head of original content programming at Ambrosia for Heads. He is formerly the editor-in-chief at Hip Hop DX. He has been featured on Revolt TV's Revolt Live as well as in Billboard magazine. He recently participated in a debate at the prestigious Oxford Union on whether Kanye West is more relevant than William Shakespeare. This moderator has also been the centerpiece of digital campaigns for Lexus, Honda, Brisk, and Simple Mobile, and has hosted concerts and panels nationwide. He's currently based in Los Angeles. Please give a warm round of applause for our moderator for the evening, Justin Hunte. Next, our next guest is a double board certified psychiatrist. He is a thought leader and influencer in the field of human behavior. He founded and oversees the Lumion Center in Beverly Hills, an outpatient treatment center for addictions, psychological issues, and personal development. He's been all over news media, and you've seen him on Oprah, Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, CNN, domestic and international. He currently hosts the show Reef Madness. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Reef Karim. Our next guest, she is the hip hop professional. She's also the author of the Hip Hop Professional 2.0. With over 25 years of music business experience with companies such as Sony, Columbia, Capitol, and more, she has worked with Prince, Outkast, and Usher, just to name a few. An advocate for many social issues, she has started several initiatives, including the No Reservations Needed food drive, among many others, including her latest initiative, Silence the Shame, which she hopes will help to peel back the layers of shame and stigma as it relates to mental health. Please give a warm welcome to Ms. Shanti Das. Our next panelist is a Grammy nominee, raised on the south side of Chicago. He first came to prominence as part of the rap collective Save Money. His 2013 solo debut mixtape, Innate Tape, set the stage for his XXL freshman cover in 2014. He dropped his critically acclaimed EP, There's a Lot Going On, in the spring of 2016, and recently released new capsule, The Manuscript. He'll be releasing his debut album this coming summer. He's also been very vocal about his feelings on the topics of mental health, and he's a voice for a new generation of artists. Please give a warm welcome to Vic Mensa. Our next panelist is a 5-time Grammy winner, all of her wins happening in the last 4 years. Most recently taking home Best R&B Album at the 59th Grammy Awards. She has shared the marquee with Prince, Stevie Wonder, Snoop Dogg, Frank Ocean, Mary J. Blige, and more. Her collaborators include Kendrick Lamar, Pharrell, Robert Glasper, Thundercat, Kamasi Washington, and others. She's the co-founder of Real Music Rebels, where quality musicianship meets social consciousness. She's also served on the Recording Academy's Los Angeles chapter board and has supported numerous initiatives in the areas of music education and advocacy. She also has a new album coming soon. Please give a warm welcome to Miss Layla Hathaway. Our final panelist is a living legend and 12-time Grammy nominee. Before launching his solo career in 2000, he racked up a string of hits in the late 70s and 80s as a frontman with the Gap Band. The pioneering R&B funk group charted such records as Outstanding, Yearning for Your Love, Burn Rubber on Me, You Dropped a Bomb on Me, and Early in the Morning. Since then, he has released 6 solo albums and received BET's 2013 Lifetime Achievement Award. In the years between the Gap Band's heyday, he survived drug and alcohol addiction, homelessness, and prostate cancer. He chronicled his odds-defying life and career in 2015 best-selling autobiography, I Am Charlie Wilson. Sober now for 22 years, the singer says, "I wouldn't have believed I'd be where I am right now. That's why I shout every night, because I thank God for allowing me to be here." Somebody say amen.
Amen.
Amen. Would you please give a warm welcome to Mr. Charlie, Uncle Charlie Wilson.
Word up, man. This is, I think I speak for everyone here. These are 2 topics that are really one topic that's close to all of us. And we definitely want to thank the Recording Academy, Music Cares, BET, and Jerry L for having each of us today. This is an important conversation. Let's give a round of applause. I want to start with you, Vic. I mean, I think Jerry L gave a great introduction when he talked about how open and outspoken you have been on this topic. You've talked about your own experiences and how different substances have helped you with creativity, different experiences that you've had with a near fatal acid trip. How have you been able to make sure you can control your substances while maintaining your creativity, which I think is something that's a fear for most artists?
You know, for me, I could remember the moment when my brain started to change. I was maybe 15 years old, and I started smoking weed when I was 11 years old. And anxiety and depression runs in my family. So I guess as I started to get older and come into adolescence and later into adulthood, I could feel the things that I was putting into my body start to impact me differently, and those effects start to carry on into times when I was completely sober. You know, and I was lucky enough, like a year and a half ago, to have a person in my life that was able to make a selfless act and taking a back seat to seeing me get better and push me to go get help. Because, I mean, you know, as the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. And maybe certain things that happened in my past, and we all have a long repressed history, you know, especially in our community. And so, as I said, I had somebody in my life that was kind enough to push me to get help, and it was only then that I really realized that I could be that better vision of myself that I could remember, because there was a period of time from adolescence when, you know, we start fucking around with this stuff early, and as that spiral kept going and kept getting deeper, and I'm reaching out, grabbing onto different things to try to bring me up to where I thought I should be, or where I was in my perfect vision of my world, I just started to lose sight of who I really was, and I forgot that I could be happy. I forgot I could go through a day without, you know, just feeling ultimately suicidal. And it was a dark time for me, and once I was able to, go sit down and really talk to somebody and start unpacking these things. Start unpacking these things that I might have never even realized I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis, then I was able to realize that the path for me wasn't one that's like drugged out rock star, I might look a certain way, but I wasn't about to, I didn't want to let that become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And when you start looking at these things that, like I said, you might not even think you're dealing with, and you start to realize that, I was dealing with feelings of insecurity that maybe I had from infancy, There was a specific moment that I remember realizing that it was actually crazy because it was kind of an experience that was before I came to this place of a different understanding of myself and substances and the role that it shouldn't play in my life. But basically, I realized that there was like a pain I was dealing with from being a small child, and my mother's white from New York, my pops is from Ghana, he's from West Africa, and I realized that there was a sense of not fitting in that I had been dealing with ever since being a baby and seeing my mother and wondering why I didn't have blonde hair and blue eyes, And that's something that when I'm 22 years old, it's not occurring to me that maybe I'm dealing with pain from being a baby, pain from coming onto this earth. And so, like I said, when I started to unpack those things, that I realized that I had to take care of myself for real, and I had to be conscious of these things. And everybody's brain is different. Everybody's chemistry is different, and my chemistry is such that, I have to be careful with what I allow to mess with that wiring. It was long-winded, but I hope it made sense.
No, it does. Yeah. I think about the challenge that takes, one, to unpack all of those things, but two, to be able to continue to live a creative lifestyle later on, to be able to continue to be on the road where you don't necessarily have, you're not eating healthy every day. You're not necessarily around a consistent schedule or structure. Charlie Wilson, congratulations to you. I mean, you've been sober now for 22 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
That's a round of applause.
Thank you.
Yes. I know a lot of young artists, and I've spoken to a number of young artists who really do feel like they need to lean on certain substances in order to maintain that creativity. And we'll also talk about the challenges they face when they are on the road. How were you able to structure your life, past your addictions while still maintaining your career?
Wow. I just think you should, first of all, you should work on yourself before you try to do any work. You should just work on yourself and make sure you have all the tools that you need for the rest of your life before you try to start going to work and all that. I know a lot of people, who was getting high and say, I got to go back to my career, and just run right out there, and the first week they're back to doing the same thing. But I just think you should work on yourself. But I keep a very special person with me all the time, and that's my wife, and she's basically almost like a rehab. She keeps everybody at bay, man. It's like, I don't care who you are. That's my daddy. Go around that way, and we'll talk about it later. And so everything is pushed away from me the first few years. I mean, she understood exactly what my mind was thinking at all times. I mean, because I was young. First of all, let me just go back a little bit. I was young in my addiction, and she was just there, man, and keeping everybody away from me, family and everybody that I ever had any contact with, that I got high with, or doesn't matter, family members or whatever. So that was great for me, and so I remember being on the road, and I hadn't had that many months sober, and the guy walked up to me, and I gave him 5 and said hello to him. He put a big rock cocaine in my hand. And I was like, dude, I don't get high no more. He said, well, I heard that. Well, if you heard that, why are you giving me the drugs? I was like, why would you do that? I mean, and it made me shake because the rock was big. Like the kind I would love to have. So I was nervous that night, and I went home, and she was like, when I got back, she said, you okay? I was like, yeah, man, but jeez. It's like, so you have to really be careful. And so I just keep my wife with me everywhere I go. We 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We go everywhere except for the public bathrooms, and that's just it. I mean, you know, and I really, really work hard at it. It's real dangerous, man, because, well, one, I don't go anywhere either. I don't go to clubs, and I don't go outing. I don't do after parties, the party after the party. I don't do none of that. You know, I get off the stage, I'm toe up tired, and I can't wait to get into bed because I'm tired, because I put a lot of effort into the work. You know, it's 90 minutes, it's up tempo mostly, and man, you know, and I'm acting like I'm 24. I'm 25. So I work hard at that, and so, you know, we go straight to the room, and we just unwind that way. But I just think that everybody should just pay attention to the signs on the wall, man. It's just like, you know, don't go into slippery places. If you're trying to stay sober, don't go into places where there's drugs and alcohol. You shouldn't go, because what's going to happen is you're going to definitely slip if the temptation is too strong. Yeah. I found that out a long time ago. Thanks for letting me share that.
No, definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And that's really the power of the support system.
Absolutely.
And you're lucky enough to have a strong support system. Yes. Dr. Reef Karim, you've spoken quite a bit about how superstardom makes all of this that much more challenging. You know, and I'm sure you've seen both sides of this equation. I mean, we've, you know, both Vic and Charlie Wilson here, they both had examples of people who've been able to help them unpack some of the challenges they've had and keep them clean. How important is the team? You know, your manager, your family members. You know, what type of role can they play when it comes to being a positive impact? But also, what kind of things have you seen that, you know, some teams have done that have actually made things a little bit more challenging maybe for the artists that they work with?
Yeah, I've had the opportunity to help a lot of people in this space in addiction and mental health, and quite a few of them are well-known performers, really talented people, celebrities. And something that I've just learned over time is that special care is not good care. You know, I've had a lot of opportunities to see people, and their entire entourage will come up to me and go, all right, we need you to help this guy out. I'm like, well, where's the guy? And they're like, oh, well, he's in his, you know, he's at his place. He doesn't want to come out. I'm like, well, why not? Doesn't he want the help? No, it's cool. We got this for him. We got this for him. And that's the problem, is you don't have it for him. The reality is there's the performer, and there's who really is an alias, because you've got the person. Charlie mentioned something about the self, right, and understanding the self, which is so incredibly important, because for a lot of performers, who they are on stage is a version of themselves, but it's not really themselves. Right. And the brain of a homeless person, and the brain of a celebrity, and the brain of a president are all similar brains in regards to our reward circuitry. And all the reward that goes on when you ingest drugs or when you have a mental health issue. So I have to get past that cloak of the celebrity or of the performer to get to know the real person underneath, because that's the brain that I'm working with. And I have to dissolve all of that stuff to find the true identity of that person. So when Charlie's talking about the self, I mean, I'm a big believer in understanding your identity, because a lot of people don't even know what their true identity is. So now how do the enablers, potential enablers, or potential support staff, you've got enablers or you've got support, and your team can do either of the two. Yep. You know, in Charlie's case, his wife is the supporter, right? That's the primary supporter. I would just, if your wife's here, right? Yeah, you might want to go. You might want to go in the bathroom with him too. You know, you don't know what goes on in there. But So the enabler part is when your support team, your team that's supposed to be supportive, is afraid to confront you, either because they're on your payroll, or they're afraid of you, or they're conflict avoidant, or they don't want to start up something, rattle the system. And it's, if you love that person and you care about that person, I don't care who you are, whether you're the manager, the publicist, or the wife, you need to confront that person.
Yes.
You know? And if you don't, you're enabling the system.
That's right.
And a true support network is someone or an entire team that will be totally truthful with you. And if you need to go to rehab for 3 months, or if you need to go see a mental health practitioner because there's something acute going on with you, even if it stops the tour, even if it stops everything that you're doing at that moment in time, you need to protect you before you can go out and do other things.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely.
yeah. I mean, I think that's an important thing. And I'm not sure how often we think about the, I guess from the executive side or from the manager's side of these situations when they see their artists or when they see someone they're close to going through some of these challenges. I know, Shanti, you've had a number of experiences in that situation. From the other side of the coin, you know, have you run into any or seen any tools that have been helpful, or what are some things that people can help think about when they do see someone close to them that are going through these challenges?
So quite honestly, from an executive standpoint, because I've had the good fortune to work for over 5 different record companies over a 25-year span, and we just didn't talk about it. I hate to say it, but I have to be 100% real. We cared about the artists, right? We wanted them to be healthy, but it was about the bottom line. And I put together many a promo tours in my day, and the artists just go and go and go. And sometimes, you know, we would blame it on them being exhausted, but sometimes they would be depressed. You know, it's a lot of sacrifice that goes into becoming an artist and a superstar. And the amount of pressure that comes from the record company sometimes, it's tough. And so I don't think any of my artists particularly expressed to us that they were going through any mental health concerns or disorders, but we saw the pain, we saw the frustration, and we would encourage them to go to the doctor if they had a cold or, you know, if something else serious happened. But as it relates to mental health, nobody wants to be labeled. No one wants to feel like something is wrong with them. And I think that's the one thing about the entertainment industry, from an executive and an artist standpoint, that bothered me is we gotta be on 24/7. It's all about, you know, putting up this mask and this facade, and people are hurting. You know, we've lost several executives to suicide. My dear friend, the late, great Shakir Stewart, Chris Lighty, who I know there's still some question on whether he committed suicide or not, but, you know, I listened to the recent podcast that they did on Chris on Spotify, and it just talked about some of the mental health issues that he had. And it's just something that we didn't talk about. And for me, I think it's refreshing to see what Music Cares does now, but we didn't really know about it. And that was just, you know, 10, 15 years ago that they would come in and help and give the support like that to a lot of artists or even executives for that matter. And we gotta do better. Yeah. We push these artists to a point sometimes of no return. And, you know, we all wanna win, we all wanna make money and live a great lifestyle, but at the end of the day, you know, I tell people 24/7, artists are regular people, and we have to treat them as such. And so when you have the enablers and you see the entourages and people around them, and, you know, obviously from a label perspective, we try to talk to the entourage and get them to help, but a lot of artists just want yes people around them, and everybody's tiptoeing around the situation and afraid to address it head on. And I, for one, have suffered from depression, and I know we'll get into that a little bit later, but it's time to speak up and be honest about it. And we have to let artists and executives know what resources are available so we can save a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, the statistics around this are striking, and I'm not even sure how many people are familiar with this. But for example, the National Alliance of Mental Illness says that African Americans are 20% more likely to suffer from mental illness. And this is something that we don't address in our communities consistently, which I think you've touched on there. Layla, I'm not sure how many people might be, you know, familiar with maybe some of the experiences that you've had around that, or at least within your family. I know that is the one consistency that I've heard from everyone talk about, which is how difficult it is to address these issues and share how we feel about these things.
Yeah, particularly amongst people of color. You know, I feel like everybody my age has at least one uncle that lived in his room, that didn't come out, that only walked to mass. You know, we all had a super sensitive uncle or super sensitive cousin, and nobody talked about mental illness. So it was not until I was about 20 years old that I even say paranoid schizophrenic out loud. My father was a paranoid schizophrenic. And at the time that he started exhibiting this sickness, my mother tried to get him help, and everyone around him tried to insulate him from getting help. Nobody could talk about it. Nobody understood what was happening. Nobody understood the medication. Just that we have the dialogue now to look at somebody in the eye and say, hey, tell me how you're feeling. You know, I don't even think it was really discussed in that way, you know?
Yeah. Well, it feels like we're at a tipping point. Like, I look at some younger artists, I'm looking at, I think Kid Cudi last year was really brave in expressing some of the challenges that he was going through. I think Chance the Rapper did an interview last year with Complex where he talked about some of these issues. Shanti, I mean, I know you've gone through different depression and had different abilities, or excuse me, different things that you were challenged with. What was the reluctance, or was there reluctance to share those feelings with people?
Yeah, of course. So my dad committed suicide when I was 7 months old. And yeah, Father's Day was this weekend, and it's always tough. I'm 46, and it still doesn't get any easier. People tend to think that because I didn't know my dad that it's easier, but it never is. And so that cloud of suicide hung over my head for many years, and I kind of just threw myself into my work, and I just wanted to be successful, and I wouldn't even let my mom bring my dad's name up. I didn't understand what suicide meant, and I always thought that when my back was up against the wall, is this something that I'm gonna do? And I remember it was 2001, and I went through my first real bout of depression. I was living in New York City, and I finally saw a therapist, but I kept it very quiet. I didn't tell any of my friends there, especially none of my colleagues, because again, you know, I think people, when you're labeled, it's looked at as a sign of weakness, and no one wants to be perceived as weak in this industry because you always got two people trying to take your spot. And so everybody's trying to, you know, stay on top of their game. But it was difficult for me to be able to open up and share because as a family, we didn't go to counseling when my dad killed himself. And 4 years ago, my best friend committed suicide. I have a family member that's bipolar, and I suffer from depression. And I came out and started talking about it 3 years ago, and I was terrified, like, because you know how people on their timeline scrolling through, and when I first mentioned that I was depressed, people were like, what? What do you mean you're depressed? You're so successful, you're this, you're that. And I'm like, I'm human, right? And then 2 years ago, I had suicidal ideation. And I'm cool, I'm here, right? I'm still here, and thank God every day for getting me through that. But this is my testimony, and that's why I started my initiative, Silence the Shame, to peel back the layers of shame and stigma around mental health so that we can normalize the conversation. What people don't understand is it's not necessarily always the more serious disorders, right? Like bipolar or BPD or paranoid schizophrenic. You are one traumatic experience away from possibly dealing with a mental health disorder. It could be the loss of a spouse, a parent. I was talking to Vic about this because he's from Chicago. These kids in these urban communities who happen to see their homeboy or their uncle or their cousin or their parent get shot in front of them, guess what? They're going to experience PTSD. People just think the military. No, that's PTSD. That's real. And so, you know, what we're trying to do is really be a voice in the community and bridge the gap. And, you know, we did a social media launch in May, just a month, almost a little bit over a month ago, and we got 90 million impressions in one day. Wow. And I'm just so grateful because we had everyone from Ludacris to Russell Simmons to JoJo to Candy from Real Housewives, like everybody around the country. We even had posts from Tokyo and Cape Town. So it just shows me that people want to talk about it. And so I applaud everybody on this panel today because, y'all, we're going to save some lives. I like to say making lives. We're making lives right now, and we're letting people know it's okay to get help.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's particularly important in minority communities, and minority men especially, even more than anyone else. And You know, I'm Indian. I'm obviously not African American, but in the Indian community, I'll do a talk or I'll go to an event, and I'll talk about mental health, and people will literally be like this, like they don't even want to see, they don't want to know, they don't want to make eye contact with me. But those same people, when I'm walking out to the parking lot to my car and I pass the bushes, people are literally popping out of the bushes going, "Hey, Doc, I got this friend," you know, and they're like hitting me up. And it's so stigmatizing and shameful to talk about anything above the neck that's problematic. Anything in your brain, you can break your arm, you can, man, I broke my leg jumping up, you know, but you have something going on with your brain, and it's a very scary thing. So anything we can do, I applaud everybody that's here, anything we can do to destigmatize this is incredibly important. And, you know, Vic said something about trauma, you know, and which has been reiterated on the panel. You know, the theories behind addiction and the connection between addiction and mental health, there's a couple of different things. And I heard both of them when Vic was talking. One is about, he mentioned something about, you know, needing to up a level. Like I was constantly trying to reach like a certain level. In addiction, one of the theories is dopamine depletion, which is there's too little dopaminergic tone, too little of this neurotransmitter in somebody that may have an addiction. And because it's low, you're constantly chasing a feeling. You're taking whatever you need to take or doing whatever you need to do to try to increase that level to feel normal. And that's why somebody will say, "Doc, the first time I had that drink, I felt totally normal. Doc, the first time I did that line of blow, I felt normal." They really mean that. Because from a neurobiological perspective, that's what's happening. The other theory behind it is trauma-based. And this comes to the PTSD, it comes to the lifestyle, it comes to the neighborhood, it comes to the violence. Trauma, even as a neonate, even in the womb, there's studies about trauma from that mom, what that mom's experiencing can pass on to the kid. From any age up until adulthood, your ability to handle trauma and how much trauma you ingest in your system and your brain can absolutely make you more vulnerable to having a mental health or addictive disorder.
Yeah. You know, I think as we continue to talk about how we need to bring awareness to this topic, and that connection between addiction and mental illness is something I don't think that most people are aware of. There's, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there is a point where addiction becomes, or the brain becomes altered, so it kind of is an example of mental illness after a certain point.
There's like 60% overlap between the two.
Wow.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. I had a finance professor who said 5% of anything is a whole lot. 6% kind of sounds the same. I think when I listen to music, when I listen to a lot of songs where artists are addressing this topic, maybe that's the reason why they tend to hit us harder, because there is a 6% overlap with some of the things that we view as common, or some of the things that we're afraid to even talk about. On your capsule you just dropped, the manuscript, there's a song called Rolling Like a Stoner. It's a really honest song about just life as a rock star, kind of sounds like, Vic. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, actually, I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, because it occurs to me, you know, when making music and having a demographic that's a lot of young kids, you know, that I don't want to be misinterpreted as trying to mislead the youth, like go pop pills, go drink alcohol, do drugs. But at the same time, there are certain situations where I feel like this music, this is at this point like my drug, you know, music. And this is my release. This is what gets me up in the morning, and this is what keeps me going. So I kind of have to be honest about my experiences. And really the bottom line of that song, and the most important line of that song is, I got a problem nobody knows. So I'm saying these things that I've done or do, and I do them for this reason. I got a problem nobody knows. And she said something a couple minutes ago that, you know, really made me think, because I'm from Chicago. I'm from the south side of Chicago. And south side of Chicago is a war zone at this point in time. And it's got casualties that, you know, in past years when we had troops in Iraq, they weren't dying at the levels that our people were dying on the south side of Chicago and are dying on the south side of Chicago today. And, you know, I look at friends of mine. I was at a funeral maybe last Friday for a 23-year-old friend of mine. And I look at other friends of mine, and everybody's doped up all the time. Everybody's drinking lean, popping pills all the time. And they don't really stop to think why they might be doing that. And, you know, people look from the outside at the south side of Chicago, or just Chicago in general, and I mean, the police don't come to the neighborhood because they're like, let them kill each other. People look from the outside into our community, and you know, they look at us as savages, and it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy to where savages become like it's a thing. It's like a thumbs up. Like I'm savage. Like you know, it's a badge of honor. I'm savage. The PTSD is just so real when it's like you go through adolescence losing people to gun violence, like it just becomes so normalized. And I've been to way more funerals of people in their teens than I've never been to somebody's funeral that died of natural causes, you know? So we deal with these things in other ways, and we don't have that support system that keeps getting brought up. That support system doesn't really exist in the neighborhood where it's like, you know, somebody for kids to talk to and to try to deal with these things in like a healing way. The healing doesn't exist, and I think until we can put that focus on healing the hurt, then there can't be any moving forward. And the savage shit is just it's self-perpetuating. So I really appreciate, you know, the things that you spoke to me about backstage and just this entire conversation. And I hope that, you know, we're able to take this and take it to where I'm from and open up these types of dialogues and open, you know, actual avenues and channels for us to deal with these problems, because we're not going to stop killing each other until we can stop hurting from who already died. That's what we're dealing with in Chicago. Just for a second, just because I think that a lot of people who aren't from Chicago look in and they don't realize this, that what you have going on right now is just a vicious cycle. And it's a lot of people, you know, my age, I'm 24, I just turned 24 years old, that it's a revenge circle. And you can't break that chain easily. So it's so much that we have to like be real about, and we got to try to help kids cope with what happened, because if you can't come to terms with the past, then you can't move into the future.
Can I say something real quick? Yep. So to your point, I'm all for freedom of speech, and I feel like artists shouldn't be censored in any way, but as it relates to mental health, like we've got to get to the artists so they can stop popping the pills and just saying, okay, self-medicate. Because oftentimes if you have a chemical imbalance and you're self-medicating, it's gonna further tip the scale. And for a lot of these kids that don't have any real money, like the synthetic weed, obviously that's terrible. If you already are having symptoms of bipolar disorder or depression, it's horrible if you use synthetic weed. So what do we do as a community of musicians and people in the entertainment community to get them to talk about actually seeing a therapist or going to a doctor? I don't know how creatively we can put that in there, but I think that's got to shift a little bit too, because even the article that I read, you mentioned Chance the Rapper, and I love him, I'm a huge fan, but part of it, he kind of joked about, you know, oh, I just go get high, you know, when I feel myself getting like that. But we've got to reshape that too and rebuild a new narrative so these kids know that getting high is not the best coping skills when you're seriously dealing with mental health issues.
What do you think?
Well, me personally, as I look at myself, as I look at young Charlie Wilson when I was a young boy, but I started very, very young, 12 years old or 13 years old, dibbling and dabbling with stuff, drinking and you know, let me just say it like this. I'm gonna use some years. Basically, I went to a party in 1960 something and didn't leave the party till 1995. Now I must have a mental problem. Anybody who can stay up, not 1 day, not 2 days, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, not 12, 14, 16 days without food or water, getting high, that must be a mental patient. And so, but I've lived through all of that because, see, I believe in God. I believe in a higher power, and I think this is why He's allowed me. Yes, He's allowed me to come and continue to sing. And He said, "Well, you're gonna shout, and you're gonna give me some glory, and you're gonna give me some praise." And I thank God for that, because I don't know anybody that could try to start a career like a great grandpa or something and have all of those #1 records and have all of these Grammy nominations and still making #1 records and still selling out arenas now. That's got to be God. And so if you don't have a higher power, you don't have anything that strong enough to lean on, man, you ain't gonna make it. I mean, you know, you can't just like, we can wallow in the past, and we can have all kinds of excuses and wallow in all of these excuses, man, it ain't gonna do nothing but keep you getting high. It's like, you have to stop, recognize the point. Like, people die, a lot of young kids die, man. They're just dying, you know, because they don't have anything else. They don't know anything else. They see other people kill when they're 9. They see other 13-year-olds getting killed, and they like, I want to kill. Right. Nobody's even talking to them about just life. Let's live. Let's live and talk to the other young ones that they coming up. And I don't, man, I just thank God for myself, man, and that He's allowed me to come here and still testify and share my story, man. So I don't know if that.
Well, I think you're an interesting case, right? I mean, because you've had the best of both worlds. You've been able to lean on your faith to get you through it,
Absolutely.
but you went and got help.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times we do one without the other.
Yeah. Let me say this thing. It was 7. I went through 7 rehab doors, or 8. And I went because somebody else told me to go. But the one time I said, I am so sick and tired of being sick and tired of just sick and tired of this nasty looking person in the mirror. And when I got to that rehab that last time, you know, I must have smoked my brains half out going around in circles before I went in there. But when I did go in, I was like, okay, this has got to be it. God, if I don't get it this time, then I'm gonna die. I already know I'm gonna die. So, you know, hey man, man, it's crazy. I live to thank God and to share my story with other people and young upcoming stars. And I said, man, I used to think I always had to have a Long Island iced tea. I gotta go. And then when I started snorting cocaine, I thought I had to go get that before I can go on stage. I mean, I wasted all of those years when I could have did it when I was 20-something years old, what I'm doing now. But I thank God He allowed me to just circle around there, you knucklehead, until you get it right. Yeah. And then I'm going to give this what you really want to get, but you got to get right first. And so, you know, we got to keep sharing and talking about mental illness and drugs and alcohol and people ODing and people killing each other. We got to keep talking about it to the younger generation, and whatever you're going through, you have to just, you know, you got to keep telling the young bucks, hey man, look, don't go kill him, man. Just let him live. Just you see, I mean, I don't know if that's the solution, especially in Chicago, man. I see so many bricks with names on it. I just wanted to cry. I went and seen a wall with all of the bricks with all of the kids' names. It's so, like he said it, man. It's more kids down in Chicago on the South Side than is in Iraq. It's like that was crazy to me. And what's the life expectancy? They don't get what? They barely get 20, some of them.
Yeah, I ain't got no numbers, but I think that, you know, this is important. Dialogue is important. But sure when it comes to the things going on in Chicago, and to be frank, in Black communities all around this nation.
Yeah, it's not just Chicago.
It's not just us involved in this. There are a lot of hands pulling a lot of strings,
for sure,
pointing us against each other.
Oh, for sure.
But you know, it does start at home, because we I think are in understanding that other people want us to fail. So I think that when it comes to the community and to stopping this killing, it's about investing in this community, you know, and investing in each other, and you know, being able to build that infrastructure that they have taken away from us, and taken away from our communities. And if our tax dollars aren't going to go to good schools in the neighborhood, then we got to make good schools in the neighborhood. And we have to have clinics in the neighborhood. If they want to take out Planned Parenthood and they want to remove funding from mental health, then we got to add funding. Those of us that are able to make our own funds, you know what I mean? We got to add our funds back to our community.
Yes, I agree.
But the dialogue, you're correct. I mean, the dialogue is important. This is something that we have to make sure that we know that there is this stigma. We know that there are things that we are reluctant to talk about, and we know that there are places that we're used to leaning that also should be accompanied with professional help in a lot of cases. I think this dialogue is something I want to open up to everyone else. I know we want to make sure that the audience gets a chance to ask each of you questions as well. But for the panelists, is there anything else that you want to make sure that you express?
I want to say I have 6 teenagers at my house right now.
What you gonna do?
My wallet is empty, and generally, we were talking earlier today about compassion fatigue. Have any of you heard of this? My best friend is a teacher. She's been in Compton and Watts for the last 15, 20 years teaching, and so she talks to me about the kids a lot. So having these 6 kids in my house from ages 9 to 15, I am really getting a crash course in just talking to kids. All of them are depressed. A couple of them know they are depressed. All of them have post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's really deep. Just trying to engage them on a daily basis, just trying to talk to them. You know, I catch each one of them at different points in the day like, what's up? What you doing? I mean, I know that I'm like the crazy old lady that's bugging them this summer. But every day, I'm just trying to engage them and talk to them about what's going on, what they're listening to. You know, they're in their phones constantly. So what's in your phone? What are you learning from your phone? Who are you talking to on your phone? I'm just trying to do my best to engage them. So I feel like, for me, it starts there with as many kids as I can, with as many people as I can, just trying to be open, to try to be a channel for peace and for change.
That's great.
That's great.
And I had the opportunity to work with Juvie, some former gang members, and working at Twin Towers with groups. And specifically groups that have suffered some type of PTSD or a lot of violence, not willing to admit they have PTSD or acute stress disorder, but they endured some stuff. And it was like crickets and silence when we started, man. Nobody wanted to talk about anything. And when you can get one person to be vulnerable, like one person, I mean, I was shocked. I was like, this sucks, man, because I've got all these guys. It's my responsibility. Nobody's saying a word. And I'm like, it's like pulling teeth. Nothing's happening. And then I finally got to one guy in the group. And when he opened up about some of his experiences, and not, you know, at first it was more bragging. It was like, yeah, I did this, and then I did that. But then eventually he opened up about how he felt inside when he did it. And at first he was like, I didn't feel anything. I go, well then, did you start feeling something over time? And eventually he opened up. The minute he was vulnerable, I started to see the room completely change. And it's not like it was a magical cure or anything, but it was opening up dialogue emotionally. And I would just add, yeah, it's important to open up dialogue, but you can open up dialogue from an educational information perspective, or you can open up dialogue from an experiential emotional perspective. Yeah. And that's when you have long-lasting change, when you do that.
That's awesome.
Break the seal.
Do you have any questions in the audience?
I got something to say.
Tech 9.
Tech 9,
everybody.
Tech 9, Tech 9.
Tech, give us 1 second. I want to make sure we get on the mic because I know we have a live stream going.
Oh, I got to talk on the mic?
Yeah.
Rapping the mic.
Right. Okay, that's cool. I've been clean off ecstasy, pure Molly, shrooms, Adderall, acid, and GHB for 11 years.
All right.
And sometimes I would do it all in one night. Until one night in LA, and you know in LA, when you're new here, you get it in abundance, you know what I mean? So I took 15 hits of ecstasy in one night.
Oh man, that's crazy.
And almost died of dehydration. Yeah. So I had to make it up in my head, did I want to die or did I want to continue to build this empire, Strange Music? So I had to do it myself. I couldn't let nobody know because we can't talk about it. Yeah. Nobody needs to know, but your friends know that you're going through something, you know what I mean? So I didn't go to a hospital or anything like that. I did it myself, mind power, you know what I mean? Because I wanted to live for my children. So I actually found something that makes me feel exactly like those drugs. A lady.
All righty then.
I'm serious though.
Take right, buddy.
Well, praise God, brother. Nothing like a good woman. My name is Tory Brandon Reese. I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. I grew up around pimps, hustlers, and all that kind of stuff. My uncle was a pimp. I saw, at the age of 16, I worked in a nightclub. The top black nightclub in the city of New Orleans was a place called Mason's Las Vegas Strip. So I saw everything. Standing here today, I'm thinking about you, my brother, young brother in the middle, because I work at Locke High School, which is in Watts.
Yeah.
And I was called to the school 3 years ago to deal specifically and directly with black male youth. So I created a program called See a Man, Be a Man. And I got brothers in the community to go with me with no pay, no money's involved, to spend at least 3 or 4 hours a week with these young brothers. Now I want to say this. I'm resonating with everything you're saying because I asked a question to the young brothers about 3 weeks ago. I say, how many of you guys have been called a bad name by your parents? Now 85% of them come from a single parent home, female parent home. Their fathers are not there. So I know that their mothers are under stress and strain, like my mother who was a single parent and raised me and my 3 brothers, right? So I asked them, had they been, called a bad name by their parents, and 100% of them raised their hand. Everybody in the class, about 23 students raised their hand. And I asked them, what was the word that bothered them the most? And it was the N-word. So their mothers are calling them a little ugly black N-word and this and that and other thing. So this is generational trauma that we're dealing with. You talked about it coming from the home. It does start in the home. But there is a serious need for us as a community of sober-minded people to come together and wrap our arms around these young brothers and sisters and spend some time with them. We do a whole lot of talking, but it's time for us to give up some of those hours we spend looking at the basketball games and all that other stuff and come and spend some time with those young people because PTSD is real. Mm-hmm. I'm also a veteran, so I see that at the VA every day, all over our community. People are in pain, and we got to go beyond the conversation and get to some action. So anyone who want to be a mentor, holler at me.
What up? We have one right there in the back.
Howdy, my name's Brian. My question's for Charlie. So Charlie, what led you to go that 8th time to rehab? Like could you bring us through that if you're willing to share?
What led you to go to rehab that 8th time?
Oh, the last.
When you finally made it?
Oh, the last time I was on the streets because I was homeless, and so I ran into a cousin of mine who looked very, very good. We used to get high together, and when I saw her skin was yellow. She was light-skinned again, and I was just looking really good. I'm like, damn, cuz, you look good, cuz. What are you doing? She's like, man. She said, I'm sober. I'm like, give me a hit. She's like, come on, I'm sober, cuz. I said, how long you been sober? 3 years. I said, it's been 3 years? Oh my gosh, I felt so embarrassed. And so she's like, tears started rolling down her eyes, and she's like, cuz you dying out here. I was like, whatever. She was like, you dying, cuz you gotta come in. And she was had went to this rehab, but now she was like a counselor. And she talked me into that rehab. And as a matter of fact, the next day, I went to the rehab. That was the last time, and it was an active rehabilitation center, and I went there. And you can only get me in a 28-day program. I needed probably 3 years, but that was serious talk. You know, I was like really not. If you'd have seen me, you'd have been like, oh my gosh, it's like I was the ugliest thing. I mean, I was just ridiculous looking, but they got me in this 28-day program. And for 14 days, I was, you know, acting like I was a superstar. Ain't had a nickel in my pocket, ain't had nowhere to stay, and I was acting like I had dyed my hair red blonde. Can you see a matchstick? I weighed about 100 and something pounds. Like what I weighed in the 7th grade. That grown man weighing that much, you know. So I was pretty small, and so the last 14 days I kind of got a hold to my spirit and broke down, and from there I started gathering tools. But yeah, that was a cousin who helped me in there. Thank God for Shirley Bennett. Wow. Yes.
Let's go right here, then we'll come back to you. Let's do this right there in the back.
My name is Eric Nuri, and I've been listening, and so far, everything that we talked about in terms of drugs have been party drugs. But, you know, we lost Michael and we lost Prince to opioid addictions, resulting from pain from accidents or injuries. So I'd like you to address the new challenge that we have of dealing with opioid addictions and deaths from overdoses.
I had go ahead. You want me to
No,
talk
go
to me?
ahead. I'll take it up.
Well, first, let me just say this. I had a back operation, and man, I begged my doctor not to operate on my back. And I was like, dude, you're not cutting on my back. And he says, you're not gonna be able to walk if we don't cut on your back. And I was like, but let me tell you something. He gave me some of those still, and it took me a minute to try to take those pills, man. I can't take those pills. And he's like, you gotta take the medication, man. I was like, dude, they kept shooting me with stuff. I was like, I can't take those pills. I was in pain for a long time, man. My wife said, just take them, you know. It's crazy. It's when you first take them, woo. Baby, let me tell you something. You're gonna like them pills. But if you keep taking them pills, it's gonna do something different to you. And what I did find out that after the time that you have the whatever 15 days, whatever it is, they give the pills to you, and you hurting again, and you try to get some more or whatever. I found out that those pills make your back hurt worse. The pain work. It just make you hurt worse. So it don't take away the pain. And then the rehabilitation thing sit in on me. I was like, I can't take those pills, but I know the doctor know more about what I'm talking about than anything, so I'm gonna let him go head on.
Listen, the doctor feels your pain as well. I mean, I had a dental extraction, and they took a couple teeth out, and the doc gives me a bunch of Vicodin. And he's like, you know, I'm not an addict. And he's like, yeah, just take this, you'll be fine. And I popped a couple of them. I was, you know, I don't like pain, right? So I popped a couple of them. It's a Friday, and I run out. And so my mom had a little bottle of OxyContin for her back issue. And I'm a doctor, like, you know, I know what's up, but I'm like, oh man, I'm in so much pain. Let me just take like one of these OxyContin. I'll be fine. I took that one OxyContin, and I got a call from CNN to go on to talk about prescription drug abuse. And I was like, sure, I'll take that. Yeah, no problem, no problem. I ended up going to my rooftop. I was juggling in my underwear, singing Justin Bieber songs. I don't know what I was doing. I was a mess. I fell asleep, I woke up, I fell asleep, I woke up. Somehow I dressed myself, ended up in the car. The car took me to CNN. I was literally like this in the car the entire time. And the makeup artist had to literally like keep squeezing my leg. So like, you know, I was like almost passing out, and then they were like, okay, Doc. And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, Doc, you're on 5, 4, 3. And she like smacks my leg. I'm like, the neurobiological changes associated with opiate addiction. And I was able to hang for like a minute and a half, and then I passed out again. And these are serious drugs. And to get to your point, I mean, I talked about this on Oprah in like 2004. This is not a new problem. No. This is an ongoing problem that is greatly contributed by doctors not knowing about addiction medicine. I mean, we want to talk about addiction up here. We need a bunch of doctors in this crowd to hear about prescribing habits. Because I guarantee you, when that doc's got 10 or 12 minutes with you, and they're like, yeah, they're not telling you, by the way, this could be an abusable drug. Right. By the way, I'm only going to give you a 2-week supply. Instead, they're giving you 6 refills on a drug that's totally abusable. You know? And so what the drug does, though, is it causes respiratory depression if you take too much of it. If you take a little bit of it, you can develop tolerance. You need more of it to get the same effect. So the celebrities that have passed, because I've been consulted on some of these, they take drugs that it's called synergistic effect, where they have the same effect. You take benzos like Ativan, Valium, Xanax, and Klonopin, they lower your respiratory drive. You take opiates like Vicodin, OxyContin, Lortab, Norcos, they lower your respiratory drive. So guess what happens? You take enough of this stuff together, you stop breathing. And you go into cardiac arrest, and you had no idea, you weren't thinking about that. You just wanted to relieve your emotional pain or your physical pain. So you're very right. And you know, we need Narcan, we need to train doctors, we need a national registry to be able to track the prescribing habits of people. We need a lot of education about this topic.
Yeah, it's a great question. We have another question right here down front. Run in the mic.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Michelle. So I kind of wanted to make some comments on Vic. I just really appreciate what you were speaking about Chicago. And, you know, this is some of the work that I'm a member of the Revolution Club in LA, and we are organizing to overthrow the system at the soonest possible time. And, thank you. Well, look, the Revolution Club, from people from all over the country, have actually taken they put their lives on hold, and they've gone to Chicago, and they're working there for the summer, and they're actually challenging these youth to get out of this life of killing each other, not by blaming them, but by actually confronting that it's the system. Like you said, there are other forces that are working on these youth, you know, and then it was actually really heavy, and I really appreciate what you said about some of these youth that get, you know, they have to go through this trauma, and then because they lose their friends, they lose, you know, people that they grew up with, and then you do have a situation where, you know, you have these mothers who are burying their children, and you have, you know, these youth that just don't want to think about this anymore, and they get caught up in like all these drugs, you know. And so it was actually like really heavy what you said about the, you know, you've gone to more funerals of younger people than some of these youth than you have of like older people, you know. And this is the reality, and it's horrific. And so it's really important that, yes, dialogue should be opened up, but then also what you're saying about actually going up to these youth and bringing this reality to them and challenging them that, look, we don't have to live this way. And which, you know, the system has no future for the youth. That's the reality. And this is why the Revolution Club is working to overthrow the system, because there is a better future for these youth. We don't have to get caught up in killing each other and blaming each other. There is another way. So anyways, I just wanted to say that, and thank you for doing it.
You know what's interesting is I feel like sometimes I have like a special kind of social media post-traumatic stress disorder. Like looking at my Twitter on a daily basis can throw me into a serious kind of down, you know what I mean? It can throw your whole day out of whack, which is crazy.
There's a study that I just read about that said that, and I love Instagram, I'm on it, this is nothing negative to them, but they were saying how being on Instagram for like long periods of time can really lead to depression.
It just desensitizes you, because I'm looking at my Twitter all day and I'm seeing, you know, my Twitter now is basically a news feed and a resistance feed. So I'm looking at this stuff all day, you know, and you just almost, like at some point in the day, you shut down. You have to shut down.
Right.
It's amazing.
Depression.
Yeah. It's true.
See, I think one thing too that we haven't really talked about, like self-care. I mean, I think part of the thing that we're trying to do is to get the community, whether it's artists or executives, to talk about mental health and to seek, you know, professional help, whether it's a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But there's also a lot that we need to do on a daily basis, right? Just from a self-care perspective. Like for me, you know, like I mentioned, this weekend was horrible for me with it being Father's Day, and I didn't even want to open the blinds. But vitamin D helps you, right? It's been proven that you're supposed to get out in the sun, and that's going to help. Even exercise helps, right? To get the endorphins going. Meditation. I started yoga. I don't really know what I'm doing yet, but my name means peace in India, so I'm like, Om Shanti, I got to get into it. And so I'm like, okay, let me own my name and get this thing going. But all jokes aside, though, it's a lot that I think we can do on an ongoing basis as it relates to self-care, and we have to promote that to those family members, to Uncle Pete, like from Soul Food, who you just throw in the back room and don't do anything with them. But we have to speak up more and support these artists and celebrities and teach them what to do on a daily basis, in addition to seeing a doctor or, you know, having a spiritual counselor in your life. Because when I was having suicidal ideation, my pastor was like, I will pray with you and I will be here, you know, step by step, but I need you to get help. So it's about teaching and creating the education and awareness as it relates to mental health and substance abuse.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. And there's, let's go with, let's go to the young lady right there. She had her hand up first.
I have a question for Shanti. You mentioned something about the record industry needs to have some responsibility with the artists, and there's a popular hip-hop artist that has a popular song that talks about prescription drugs, Percocet and Molly, and some of you guys might have heard that song, and he'll do a concert and the entire stadium of young people are singing along to these lyrics. Do you think the labels encourage rap artists to make songs about drugs?
I don't think they necessarily encourage them to make songs, but if it's selling, they're not gonna say don't release it. You know, all the labels that I've been at, you know, they've been pretty supportive of the artists to have freedom of expression and creativity. They're not telling them what specifically to make their records about. Most of the artists, from a hip hop perspective, and at least historically, it's talking about your community and your environment and what you see. And the unfortunate reality is, whether you're in private schools in the suburbs or in public schools, drug addiction is a big problem. It's a huge issue. So, you know, they're talking about their surroundings, and like Vic mentioned, like artists are popping pills like, you know, we wake up every day and take a breath. So I just think we have to create some level of balance there. I can't blame the labels 100%, but I do think that they need to take a little bit of responsibility and say, hey, let's create a balance, right? That's why I always work with artists and help them to promote their foundations and what they're doing in the community, because for everything good you do, it's gotta be, you know, for everything bad you do, it's gotta be something good. And so I think if we at least start encouraging that and promoting that and really getting the artists to understand that the kids just need to see a balance. We need a balance in the universe. It just can't, you can't get high all day 24/7. You just can't. But at the end of the day,
I did. I think, whoever thought that, I mean, Prince would be a poster child for opiates. I'm just think about that. I mean, when I was coming up, I mean, we all knew each other, but as my addiction got so crazy, I mean, these people, they kept me away from all these superstars. Like, I don't hang out with him. He's like, yeah. Everybody's dead but me. Okay, everybody, all of the superstars, it was just like everybody's gone, man. I was like, you know, and as I was getting sober, I was just like, let me talk to some of these people, and they still didn't want me hanging out with them, but then they died of the drug. So I'm still left here. Thank God. Thank you so much. So I'm here to talk about it, you know. I think we should continue to talk about it. Yeah, we should talk about it. And I think what happens is, we as the druggie, we don't want to admit that we have a problem. See, you're gonna call on the doctor on the ninth inning? You know, what is it, the top or the bottom? Which one is when the game's gonna be over?
Bottom.
The bottom of the ninth? You gonna call the doctor at the bottom of the ninth, and then you gonna get on, what? You gonna get on the elevator and die out? Come help me now, dude. Come on. I mean, no, that's not how it goes. We should.
But it's kind of like when you are sleepy at the wheel, like you don't know that you're sleepy until you get home. Like, how did I get home? Yeah. I think for a lot of people, they just don't.
You swear about the road.
Yeah, but that's about your community then. That's your support network. Because most addicts don't come to rehab going, hey, doc, I think I'm an addict. I need some help. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. It's usually somebody your wife's dragging you in, you know, or your family members or your friends or your somebody. Because you don't see it because your brain is hijacked by the drugs at that time.
Well, I mean, you know, from my perspective, yeah, I know you were on Oprah in 2004. I feel like opioids is just now becoming a real issue. It's something that we're aware of. I remember them selling opioids on commercials during football games for 20 years. So I don't know if that stigma was even there for pills the way it is now that we see the long-term effects of this. I think that, you know, that's going to be, I think that's something that I'm glad kids are at least having the opportunity to understand. But we've known about cocaine for a long time. We've known about heroin for a long time. They used to tell us stuff about weed that wasn't always accurate. But they sold us, they were selling opioids on TV. Like they would show them, they had commercials. You know, and so, you know, this one is, I think, more serious because this is essentially heroin pills that we're talking about.
And I'm wondering when we're, as a people, as a nation, going to, you know, start holding these drug companies accountable.
There you go.
Those are the same people lobbying, making our laws right now, and they're selling us the drugs, and we saying that the doctors got to watch what they prescribe. But honestly, these companies they're selling us poison.
And to the young lady's point, you know, I worked at a label, like I mentioned, for almost 25 years, and we have a breakdown in our communities too. So we can't blame everything on the labels, right? We can encourage them to do better and create better messaging, but we gotta take our kids and our families and our sisters and our brothers back. People that we know are hurting and that are doing wrong. Because if we don't take it back, because we know from an oppression standpoint, it's so much that is against us in our communities, we're gonna keep doing what we think is right, but we have got to place that onus back on us and take our lives back.
One more question? We have one more question. Right there in the middle. Yeah. Right there.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jamila. I actually have two questions. One is for Vic and one is for Shanti. So first of all, thank you all for taking out of your time to come and sit and share your experiences. So Vic, as a mother to 4 boys ranging from 23 to 11, I'm just really curious, how were you able to have access to drugs? Or I think you said you were smoking weed at 11. How were you able to have access to that? I have an 11-year-old son, and at the risk of sounding silly, I cannot imagine my 11-year-old having access to those type of things. I think part and parcel is because of how my ex-husband and I co-parent him. And so I just can't imagine that. So if you can answer that, I appreciate that. And Shanti, I'm so excited about what you were sharing about the part about self-care and your silence the shame. I would like to know if you can give a little bit more about your organization and so on and so forth. Sure. Thank you.
I went to public school.
Pretty much. There it is.
Pretty much.
There it is.
So basically recess. basically recess, the lunchroom.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I went to school in the city, and so you take the bus to school even. I mean, recess, you leave the playground, come back to the playground, hide. It's, so, but I would say, if I could weigh in, that it's like, it's also, I didn't, my family was never really so vocal about things like that, you know? And so were I to have a son, I'm sure eventually I'll have kids, and those are conversations that you want to have, because if you're not having a conversation and you know you got a bunch of kids in the city really doing what they want to do, then it's easy to be influenced.
Yeah.
So thank you for your question. We're really excited about the progress we're making with Silence to Shame. It's a real grassroots effort right now. We have a podcast that's on iTunes. I'll be calling you guys to be interviewed for our podcast. Shameless plug. But on a serious note, we are putting together, because I think a lot of the college students are suffering too from depression and anxiety. So we have Silence to Shame campus ambassadors. We have about 15 students that are signed up already, and it's starting to spread around the country. We're also doing mental health fairs in various cities. We're about to shoot a documentary, a 4-part series on PTSD, suicide and anxiety, and behind the bars of mental health, because that's something we didn't talk about today from an incarceration standpoint, but mental health runs rampant with a lot of people that are locked up. So we're just getting started. I think God really placed this on my lap, because he allowed me to work with the Outcasts and the Princes of the world and Usher, and now I'm gonna really market Silence to Shame like a rap record. And that's why I think we're making strides, because like NAMI and a lot of organizations, Mental Health America, are really excited about the work that we're doing, because we're able to connect to an audience that they hadn't been able to connect to. So you can follow us at Silence to Shame on Instagram, on Facebook. We post a lot of helpful information and articles. We really have our finger on the pulse of what's going on a daily basis, and we'd love to have you involved.
Once again, I want to thank everyone on this panel today, and also thank you to the Recording Academy, BET, Music Cares. We have Jeriel. Would you like to say anything, Jeriel, before we close out here?
Come on, let's give another round of applause to all our panelists.
There you go.
Thank you, guys. We truly appreciate all of your transparency and just for taking the time to do this. Thank you to anyone who has tuned in on all of our live streams. And thank you all again. We just truly appreciate and can't thank you enough for having this conversation, being a part of it, and helping to destigmatize the issues of mental health and addiction. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We truly appreciate it. I also wanted to as the panelists leave, I wanted to call up Shireen to talk a little bit more about Music Cares as the panelists exit. So thank you all again. I appreciate it.
This is great.
Thank you so much.
You're funny. Love you, man.